Okay, now I'm ready to put the clutch release mechanism in there before you put the clutch basket back together again. So this little short pin goes in there first. Then 5/16 steel ball goes in there next. You got to watch that. You could lose that in the wash tank or something. You can get those steel balls at a bearing shop. They're real cheap. That goes in there next. Then this push rod goes in there. You'll see a mark on the end where the steel ball's been running. Steel ball acts as a thrust bearing in there. And it'll go through the rubber seal, or the rubber seal on the back side. So. And that's all there is to it. Now it's about time to stack up the clutches and put the pressure plate on there, and we're all done. Doing timing today. The first thing to time this engine, you have to find this little slot right here, which is in this flywheel. That's what you're trying to hit. And that slot, you're going to put this is a screw that I made, but any pin that's about that size goes in that slot. It's about 100 thousandths wide, that slot, maybe 125,000, something like that. And it has to go in that slot, and the screw's going to go in from the side. This is the screw that's used for setting the static timing on this engine, which we take the screw out, which is nothing more than a screw and a little gasket. I'm going to put the timing screw or pin, whatever you're using, in this hole and rotate the flywheels around until it engages in that slot, and that's how we're going to get the position fixed. Now I've set the armature on the shaft just loosely with this screw. You see it's just finger tight. It's sitting on that taper, and you'll notice I can turn the armature without the crankshaft moving because I have the timing pin in. It can't move. So I set the cam to the high point of the ignition cam. Now it's time to set the points. Once I get those set, then I'll rotate this to where the points just break, and that'll be the right time. But you have to rotate the same way as what the engine runs, and the engine turns this way. Okay, the points are gapped now. As you can see, when the points open, close that little light. Let me see if I can put it here where you can see it. Light goes on and off, a little test light there. The engine turns this direction, counterclockwise from the way we're looking at it here. So what I want to do is rotate this armature. See, right about there it goes out. You see, that's when the points break. That's when I want to lock that thing down. I'll just kind of temporarily snug it up with this knuckle buster wrench here. Once it pushes on that taper, it's not going to turn then. Okay, so there the points have broken. So if you wanted to check it, you'd take out this little timing screw or back it off like I'm doing here, see? And you can see the points are on, and there's where they break, right there. And right where they break, if I tighten this screw down, it should go right in that slot in the flywheel, which is kind of hard to feel, but there it is. And that's all there is to it. When this thing comes around, Right there's where it breaks, right there. I'm gonna back this out and look down in the hole. Might be I could see something in there if I had a little flashlight. Thought I'd show just how I'm assembling this thing. I decided it's too hard to try to put this cylinder down over these two pistons. There's a chamfer in there just like they are on single cylinder bikes to help you get it down on there, but I think for two cylinders and as heavy as this casting is, it would be too difficult. So I put the pistons in the cylinder part way. You'll notice I got a wooden, like a 2x4, or it's about the thickness of a 2x4, but I guess it's about 1.5 by 1.5 block here. That's just to support the cylinder and aid it a little bit. I could still rock it to help me get the rods in the pistons. But I put the pistons in the cylinders first. You have to make sure that the ring end gap is going the right direction, so you want to make sure you mark the pistons with the exhaust port. These particular pistons didn't seem to have a mark. Usually they have an arrow pointing at the exhaust port, but this one doesn't seem to have it. So I made sure which way the pistons had to go first. Squeezed the rings in with my fingers and just worked the piston. It wasn't too hard to put the rings in there. And then I put the gasket on here, which I just oiled up on each side. Stuck the gasket on there. And then with the pistons this way, I put the wrist pin in there. First I put the snap ring on the bottom side first, so I knew that I couldn't go too far with the pin. So that side of it's already in there. And then I put the pins in there this way and just tapped them through. I used this little plastic hammer to kind of help, but they went in there real easy. And you know, once it's lined up right and you hit it in the right spot, it'll go right down in there. Just used I guess I had a little piece of aluminum here somewhere that I used just to kind of seat them, make sure they were down in there all the way. And then I put my snap rings in from here using snap ring pliers. So that was pretty much all there is to it. I oiled up the rings, oiled up the pistons, oiled up the bearings and the rods, and I see no reason why I can't put it together now. So that's all there was to assembling it anyways. Hope this thing runs. See, it's out of phase just a little bit there. Now they're both even. Well, one goes down before the other. Well, there it is. Pretty much put together, but it's just pretty much for show. I mean, it's a perfectly good engine and would run great, but I don't really have a bike to put it on, so it's just an engine that's for display only, I guess. I don't know what alloy they used on these, but the carburetor, cylinder head, and I think these engine castings, they're high zinc content. I think they're pretty much zinc die cast. It's not really aluminum. It's very heavy. This whole engine is very heavy. In fact, I can barely pick this thing up myself. So the castings that they used were really good, but they were heavy. Of course, this is cast iron, but man, that's a heavy engine. I'll say that.